Welcome back, everyone. In this video, I want to discuss a little bit more about these re-rendering cycles and how it reinforces what we kind of already know about React and re-rendering. But it's still good to really understand this mental model. So let's walk through this. Here inside of our navigation component, we know that we're leveraging this current user that we get from useContext. But in order for me to show you a couple things, I'm going to change up how some of these components are calling different things. And you just have to follow me here. I'm going to stop console logging current user in our navigation. What I'm going to do instead is inside of our signup form, I'm first going to just console.log out the word hit. And what I'm also going to do is show you inside of this component. So when we refresh and run our application for the first time, when our signup component mounts, we see hit from signup. This is perfectly expected. What I also want to do is I want to turn on paint flashing. So this is from the rendering tab. If you remember, inside of the three dots down in more tools, when you select rendering, this will show up, and then I want to click paint flashing. The reason why I want to do this is because I want to show you right now, our signup component, despite being nested inside of our top level context component. Remember, user provider is wrapping app. Inside of app is sign in, sign up, navigation. Everything is a child of app. But what you'll notice is that despite the fact that when we sign in, we know we're setting user inside of that top level provider. What you see though is that hit does not rerun. This is just that initial call when we mounted for the first time. So clearly, this component is not getting called at all. But what happens if we actually hook into this signup form? So I'm going to keep the console log hit actually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the useContext hook, and I'm also going to bring in the userContext object. And what I want to do is I just want to hook into it. So I'm going to say const val is equal to useContext, userContext. Now what happens? Well, because now I've hooked into the context, as long as userContext values change, this component is going to rerun. So what we should see is that when we refresh, everything mounts for the first time, of course. But we see that initial hit value that comes from our signup form. And what will also happen is that when I sign in to my user and the provider updates, notice that hit gets called again. The reason for this is because the signup form is hooked into the context using the useContext hook. Even though we didn't do anything with any of those values, React doesn't care. The fact that you're hooked in means that this component needs to rerun. This function, at the very least, that represents our signup component. However, notice that none of the actual portions of the DOM updated. Despite the fact that React re-ran the code, it did not actually re-render anything on the DOM. And the reason for this, of course, is because nothing changed on the DOM. So this is where that virtual DOM and the actual reconciliation steps that we walked through way back in the beginning of this course prove itself again. So this is one important thing I want you to know. If you have multiple components that are all listening to a context, even though they don't use the actual values, for example, just as we see here, we're just initializing the value. We don't actually do anything with it. The fact that you're hooked into the context will cause React to rerun your function. Now, it doesn't mean that it will re-render anything to the DOM, because it only will if your JSX values actually update based on this value. However, what you still need to think about is the fact that all of the code up until that return statement is still getting called. That is a very important thing to know. The fact that this code is getting called could be a performance problem if you have hundreds of components that are all hooked into a context. So this is just something to really consider and think about. But now that at least we understand that the way that React decides to re-render things is still within the exact same knowledge that we had about components and how they re-render things, really not much has changed. You can kind of see use context as just a glorified hook into another component that will re-render its subsequent hooked components whenever this component updates in some way. And the only way that this component updates is if we trigger it to update using useState, useEffect, whatever that we designate. And we'll talk more about this in the next upcoming videos. But I just want to clarify this particular point about components hooking into context and getting recalled, or not necessarily re-rendered, but at least the functions getting rerun. So now that we understand this, let's get rid of this code that we have here inside of signup form. We're going to keep this code right here because we will need to update signup form. But that's my challenge to you. I want you to utilize use context and user context for signup form to also set the user when we successfully authenticate with email and password. So do that, and then I'll see you in the next video.